Assalamu alaikum everyone, Ex-Division Cadet Sabir Shah here again for my channel Aviation Cadet 9936. I will talk about the internal politics being happened within Air India, their bureaucracy and politicians in terms of the case, the ill-fated flight AI-171. So in my first part of the video, I would give the testimony of a whistleblower from within Air India, a president of All India Pilot Association, Captain Sam Thomas, his recent podcast with Burkhadutt on her Mojo podcast on YouTube, available. It's in English, so you can go and watch it and have a clearer picture. I would just post a few things from that. And then I would quote, in the second part, I would quote another ex-Director General of Indian Airlines, Mr. Captain SS PANESAR. Well, you would read his name as PANESAR, but that's the local language, and his name is PANESAR. These two accounts, these two whistleblowers, what they said, I've never heard about the Indian Airlines before, because I don't follow the Indian Airlines news mostly, but this has surfaced now and has a big impact to whatever has happened to that ill-fated flight, which I will discuss in the end on the third part. And then with these two testimonies, once you would compare, that would probably make sense to you. So first of all, disclaimer, I'm a nobody, just a YouTuber, and aviation is my passion. I'm an ex-Pakistani Air Force pilot and served for 2.5 years, flew 3 aircraft, and recently I am not into any kind of aviational things. So it's, you could call me a YouTube university graduate. Yeah. So let's begin. Burkhadutt, I would give her a credit, although she had played a very negative role in Pakistan-India war, but during this time, she had been promoting the pilots, and actually this should be the main thing. That at the end of the day, it's easy for anyone to blame the pilot because he was the one who had the controls and the plane perished. So this is true, but the advantage you have to give them, they cannot come and defend. They cannot come and defend for their actions. They tried to, no one wants to die, no pilot wants to die. The actions they did at that time, they were 100% convinced that they could save themselves first, and then the passengers at the back. But for some reasons, in most of the cases, the pilots died the first. So she had been an advocate for these pilots for any political reasons, anything, I don't care, but yes, this should be the voice. And for every crash report, the main aim is to know exactly what has happened so that we could prevent this to be happening in the future, so that people should keep their trust on these big machines. And it's still the safest mode of traveling anywhere in the world. More pedestrians die than people who die in the air crashes. So still the safest mode, and people should keep their trust into them if the reports come out unbiased and neutral reports. Whatever has happened had been coded in the report perfectly well. So once you hear these two testimonies, you would know what I'm saying. Again, it's South Asia, and the culture is pretty different, which I said in my previous videos to gard, the shortcut culture, where everyone is a leg puller. Everyone wants to pull the legs of the ones who are above you and then try to take their place. In most of the civilized countries, it happens differently, that you show yourself, you show your potentials. If someone is higher than you in any sense, you show your potentials to be higher than the person. That's my concept, by the way. Probably I could be wrong, I could always be wrong, but that's what I have perceived. And once you show your, the leg pullers are everywhere in the world, but I mean, most generally we're speaking about, but in this part of the world, no matter it's India, Pakistan, Nepal, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, these countries, Bhutan, they have this kind of tendency of leg pulling. So Mr. Captain Sam Thomas, the Indian guy, Burkhadutt, he actually said that he talked about 3 F's in Indian Airlines. No matter what, Indigo Airlines or Indian Airlines, 3 F's is not the F you're thinking. Number 1, he said fear. Number 2, he talked about fatigue. And number 3, he talked about fines. Now, fine doesn't mean that fine, thank you, how about you? This fine is in terms of punishment to the pilots. He quoted a few examples, and one of them blew my mind out. So they call it P-gate scandal. Literally, you could Google it, P-gate scandal. What is P-gate scandal? A passenger, he peed on a female passenger during the flight. Now, see, it's a conduct of a passenger against another passenger. Would you think that pilot should be suspended for that? Indian Airlines suspended the pilot. For 3 years, he has been asking for the court dates or whatever. Like the ATPL and CPL, they have to be renewed. And if you have a gap of 6 months, you have to pay a huge amount of money to get those licenses renewed. And yet, a passenger peed on another passenger, and the pilot was suspended. I mean, I was bamboozled. So they fly in fear. And of course, they're fatigued, which Captain SS PANESAR, he explained that once let's suppose it's 12th of June and around 11:30 in the evening, and the pilot lands back. So he clocked out at 11:30 and his day is done. So right after half an hour, the new day would start. So the amount of rest given to them would be, a date has been changed, or 24 hours have been changed, although it's just a date change within half an hour, and they are asked to fly again. I mean, you know that pilots, the time of amount they fly in the air, they have to be given rest according to the same time, but not in Air India. Then Mr. Sam Thomas, he mentioned about the damaged black box, that Indian authorities are willing to take that black box to the US. And the president of the All India Pilot Association, Sam Thomas, he mentioned his concern. He said that there's going to be a bureaucrat, a babu, or a politician who is going to join, who's going to take this black box to the United States of America, and where the Boeing company is going to conduct the, they're just going to open it and then reveal the data. So he says that those people have no idea what they're going to say. Boeing is never going to take a blame on them, although that's also false. Boeing did take a blame on themselves when this Boeing Max 800, when it went down, both the occasions they took the blame on themselves. So I can still understand the bias here, yes, but his concern was that these people, bureaucrats and the politicians, once they would go, they are going to be offered limousine. Now this is a bribery accusation on Boeing, and Boeing should take notice of that one and file a defamation suit against the president of All India Pilot Association. Reason being, he mentioned very clearly, and he gloated that how Capt Steve, he called him a TikToker, by the way. He's a YouTuber. There's a huge difference between a TikTok and YouTube, but anyone who was trying to defame him, because in India, a TikToker is not considered to be, a very high level person in the society. So he called him a TikToker, and he actually confessed that they reached up to FAA and made a complaint against Capt Steve, and even went to his employer and made a complaint.
What we felt at that time, and let me tell you that it was one American TikToker that set off this entire frenzy. And we don't want to blame him completely. Everybody is entitled to earn their bread within the confines of their intellect. What we were saying is that how the media lapped it up, and we would not have gone behind him had he not touched the pilots. Now, that is the time we wrote to the FAA, we wrote to his employer, and that is the reason why you see a complete 180-degree turn from them, and he has paid tribute to the Indian pilots by saying that they know English. Wow. So that is one thing. And
he said that we went behind his back because he attacked the pilots. The first three, when he came up with the flaps were raised up instead of the gears. And he called him, all those derogatory words. Mr. Sam Thomas used those words. Sir Sam Thomas. So this is what has happened. So what I'm saying is that he accused Boeing that they're going to bribe. This is not called lobbying. This is called bribing a person, which is by punishment a crime. in the United States. So,
and who is accompanying it? Suppose you have decided to send it out, who are the competent people who are going to accompany it? Because we have seen that when you send a bureaucrat, what happens there is an absolute travesty of justice, wherein you'll get a limo. When you go there, they will send you a limo and they will send you on a shopping spree and then bring you back and hand over the results to you.
So he said that all this is going to happen. So I guess, Captain Steve, if you have a chance, go take your revenge against the guy and tell the Boeing to file a defamation suit against. This is not an ordinary person like me or anyone else, right? It's a president of the All India Pilot Association accusing Boeing that they would bribe. The limousines would come and then they would bring them to parties, and then they would hand over the report to them, and they would have no idea what the report says. So Boeing is not going to take the blame of this incident. So he is actually saying it's not the pilot error, it's the Boeing error. The machine made the error. This is what he tries to amplify. And then on the other hand, Mr. PANESAR, Captain PANESAR, I could see that he was, although even the Sam Thomas, you could hear that he was concerned about the pilots. He even said that he didn't have courage to go and meet the dead pilots' parents because he felt.
How I can explain that, and the state of Sumit's father, I simply cannot fathom what he's going through, and many of us didn't have the guts to go to his funeral. That is the fact.
What do you mean? You didn't want to feel that complete devastation of emotion in your heart?
Correct. And we've seen it before, but as brave as we claim to be, we sent some of our members. We might have made, of course, we had flying commitments, that was different, but I personally did not have the courage to go and face his parents, his father, basically.
Like betrayed, nothing he can do about them. He was that, he couldn't do anything. So I could see from his voice that he was really concerned about whatever has happened. So Mr. PANESAR, he added fuel to the fire, and he said that when the anchor asked him a question about what probably could have happened to this flight, the dual engine failure and blah, blah, blah. So, and he confirmed, Mr. PANESAR, he said,
first of all, let me explain you what is the takeoff procedure. Aircraft comes, a pilot goes to the operation department, flight dispatch department, he's given a briefing. This aircraft, the engineer signs a certificate, I inspected, no snags in the last flight, and perfect. That certificate is signed by the commander also. Yeah. After they sign, then the commercial man comes, he said, this is the loading, sir, in the front cargo, here so much is load. Normally they overload it, but they write different figures to satisfy the pilot. When all these things are set, he sets the weight in the computer, he gets the speeds. There are 3 speeds known as V1, VR and V2.
He said that what happens is once the pilots are told to fly in area, they go to the conference room, and where they're given the debrief of the aircraft. The engineers tell them that from the previous flight, this is fit to fly on this plane, and then the loader comes in and he gives him a brief that how much weight is being in the cargo section of the aircraft, and he said, quote unquote, he says that the loaders, they always tell a lie to satisfy the pilot. And it's always overloaded, but they tell him within the weight configuration, and the pilot uses that entry, that wrong data entry into this aircraft. And then they guess their speeds and they do everything. And then he explained what's V1, what's VF, what's V2. And he said that, well, he just explained what everyone else has been explaining. So the wrong data entry, one thing. And then he quoted about an incident of Boeing 777.
Who have oxygen only for 12 minutes for passenger in case of pressurization failure. He said, I will not operate on this aircraft to Bangalore because in case of pressurization failure, I'm supposed to come down to 10,000 feet immediately. But I cannot come because the hills are 25,000 feet. You give me a different route. They say, no, you have to fly on this route. He said, I will not go. He refused to fly. The flight was delayed by 8 hours. And they gave him a different, when he came, they suspended, they terminated service. Is this the way?
And he said, if I'm operating at 25,000 feet, people would be, even I myself, he would suffer from hypoxia right away once the oxygen supply is disconnected. And everyone on board would be dead if there's in case of emergency. So the pilot refused. And guess what? He was terminated. How dare you refuse? And again, when he got terminated, another pilot was in line they don't care, and filled the place right up there. Too many pilots in India, 1.5 billion people, so imagine. So this is what Mr. Panesar, and he gave more examples as well. The thing is about when he was asked directly that do pilots have the access to the fuel control switch, and that's where he kind of, because he knew if he answers it rightly, all the theories that pilot accidentally switched the fuel supply, but it accidentally cut off the fuel supply, could carry some weightage if he would have given a correct answer, but he chose not to.
Please correct me if I'm wrong, that pilots don't have access to the fuel systems. Who do you think shut off the fuel system? Do you think it could be somebody on the ground who perhaps did this?
No, but no pilot will shut down the fuel lines after takeoff and all that. One crash took place in Korea. There the aircraft landed and his wheels were not coming. I don't see this is the briefing and the training required to the pilots. He should have gone up, burst the fuel and not dump the fuel, make the aircraft lighter, land up, and before touchdown shut the fuel lines. Because if the fuel line burst, there'd be a fire. He could have saved the aircraft, he could have saved the passenger. In India, we have 2 incidents where pilots landed with gear up, aircraft are saved, lives are saved. But this is the training. If we recommend the training and all that, but the people in Air India won't like it.
But they don't have access.
I can
They don't
assure
have
you
access to those the fuel engine, right? They don't have access to the fuel lines, right? The pilots.
He has only one fuel lever which he puts it on to start the engine. That's all. He can shut the line in from the cockpit.
Well, how do you think that happened?
No, you see, Boeing company has assured when we started getting Boeing from company, they say at no stage Boeing will have 2-engine failure. They guaranteed us. But today it has failed. But I do not know, ma'am, unless we go and on.
He just said, well, if you watch the interview, you will see it by yourself, that he said that because the anchor was trying to improvise that the pilot has no control over the fuel supply to the engine, but actually we all know that the pilots do have a full control to the fuel supply system, and pilots can cut off the supply of the fuel to the engine if they want. When do they want? He himself quoted an example of the Jeju Airlines. He said this pilot was, it is stupid, but that's what he meant. He said, the simple SOP is that you get into the airborne, you get airborne again, and you dump your fuel. And once you dump your fuel, as soon as you touch down, you cut off the supply of the engines by turning the fuel control switch off. And that's how you will save many people on the ground. And of course, that's what he said. These Jeju airline pilots, they did not dump the fuel, even they had a chance. They had a bird hit surface and compressor stall. I don't think so that it would be really stupid to stay in the air and try to dump fuel. That's my 2 cents. They did what they did. What they did not know that there was these VHS antennas installed with a concrete wall at the end of the runway, and that's what made this airplane perish. He had a beautiful landing, I think. That was really nice at the beginning of the threshold. It's just that the aircraft couldn't stop. So he did what he could do under those circumstances. And now the recent video of these huge, swarm of birds that went into both the engines, and compressor stall happened on one, and then of course he had no other option than to land. He tried his best, but sometimes things are not in favor. By the way, on fighter planes, we do dump the fuel and try to get the gears manually down. And there are many, like getting the deep dive, you give the negative G's, you give the positive G's, and you literally, shake the aircraft up so that they could come down by the gravity. One of my course mates, he had this incident on fighter aircraft, and he was with his instructor, and they pulled so many G's that my course mate, he almost fainted, literally. We're talking about -3 G's human limitation, and then +6 G's. So you range between -3 to +6 G's, the G pressure. That's how you try to get the gears down. But passenger airplanes, they don't have these much options. If you give negative G's on the airplane, half of the passengers at the back are going to die, because they're not trained to absorb those many G's. So now that we have 2 testimonies, and let's get into the final part. These pilots were under stress. once they did their, initial checkups, this flight is bound to London, and mostly Indians. Even the survivor, he is called a British national, but he's Indian. You can see from the looks. Don't call me racist. Okay, this is what it is. We're not white people. But globalization made many immigrants to many other countries. So, but most of the people, they belong to their Indian origin. They have the Indian origin, and in our local culture, 7 kilos of weight is allowed, but hardly anyone takes the 7 kilos hand carry I'm talking about. And because you have to take your, masalas, you have to take your oils and stuff like that, all those things, daily use things, people do that. You take even tea, because one thing that most of the things over there are expensive, so you just take them on your flight. So you have hand carry of 20 kilos to 25 kilos per person. And people try to get all these things onto the planes. I don't know if pilots cater those things or not, but for him, for any pilot, 242 passengers times 7 kilos, that would be the weight he would have input into the flight control systems. But here it was plus 20 kg per passenger. That's the extra weight. Number 2, you know that India-Pakistan war, so this flight path has been changed, and it doesn't go over Pakistan because you have closed the airspace for Indian Airlines, tit for tat. So now from Ahmedabad, they have to go all the way to the Arabian Sea, and then from there they make a right and then go up north and reach UAE, Qatar, and then following the Gulf, they enter into, over Turkey, they get into the UK. So this additional an hour and a half, so that also means that you have tens of thousands of gallons, extra gallons you have to carry. And this normally, I mean, just for example, the vapor lock theory and blah, blah, blah theory, these all, I mean, the weather is hot in India. Overall, it's 40 degrees is a normal thing, most of the India. So these theories, they just get extinguished, they become extinct because this is a very common weather in India. But extra weight, extra load, and extra thing which were not, the airplane didn't know that how much weight is on it. This extra fuel they carry for this extra 2 hours, because of the airspace closed, that has also to be accounted for and had to be put into this one. So the aircraft was overweight, conditions were hot. If that a few tons of fuel was not there, probably the aircraft would have taken off prior to whatever. I will come to that one, where did the plane aircraft took off. So the pilots are under fear, under fatigue, and afraid of being fined. This is the culture in Air India at the moment being discussed. So now, if you see the taxi video, made from the taxiway, that surveillance camera video, as soon as behind those huts, as soon as the aircraft takes off, you would see a huge dirt kind of storm coming up, only on one side of the runway, not on the other side of the runway. But that leads us to 2 possibilities. Number 1 is that the left engine was working and the right engine was not working. Now, normally once we take off, no matter what plane it is, we try to be on the center line. But if your right engine is not giving the full power, it's not working properly, you would try to take off from the left side of the runway. Reason being, the right engine is stalled. Your aircraft would have tendency to yaw towards the right side, so you don't want to end up in the grassy patch right next to the runways. That's why you try to have the roll on the left side of the runway. And this runway is about it's 46 meters wide, 46 meters. And if it were in the center line, the location of engines under the wing, the wingspan of 787-8 is 60 meters. And the location of engine is, the fuselage is about 18 feet. And the fuselage width, and from fuselage to the center of the runway, sorry, not the engine, center of the engine, And that distance is about 9 meters. So 9 plus 5, 14 meters. So you see, center line should be at 20 meters. So it moved into the half of this side. So that's why we see a big, dust storm at the bottom of the, as soon as the aircraft takes off, but you would see nothing on the right side. This tells that only one engine had thrust on takeoff. Now, we don't know whether this engine had less power. Normally, when you start in 787-8, thanks to YouTube University, you start the right engine first and then the left one. Well, when I used to fly dual engines like 337s, A's and B's, we had the sequence. If we start the right engine on this takeoff first and then the left engine, then on the next takeoff, we would enter that observation in our form 247, where the next pilot would see that which engine would start first. So he would start the left engine first and then the right one. Then when it's my turn, so I would start the right engine first and the left engine first, but I don't know about 787-8, what's the sequence, but what I saw on the YouTube University, the manual, it says that they start the right engine first, and then once everything is under control, they start the left engine, and then that's how they take off. And right engine of the aircraft has been recently replaced. It's a brand new engine. And the old one was overhauled into 2023. Normally it goes up to a certain limit of hours, 15 to 20,000 hours of flying. Then they overhaul it, or if it has to be replaced, they replace it, like in the case of right engine. So there was some problem with the right engine. And then once you go up, you're up in the air. As soon as they went up, now all the theories of cutting the supply off instead of the bad engine cutting the supply on the wrong engine, now they carry some weightage. Because this plane, no matter all these American TikTokers, they try to defend the machine and they say that how safe is Boeing 787-8, it never had any problems. But the aircraft did crash at the end of the day. It did crash after 90 seconds from the first throttles full and the roll on the runway. It did crash. The fact is, the aircraft crashed. Now, no matter what kind of excuses you give to defend your machine, it went down. And same is the case with the people who think that it can't be the pilot error. Same thing again. The aircraft did go down. If it didn't go down, it landed back safely. We would have been talking about that at the moment. So the net result, the end result is it's crashed. And again, machine plus pilot plus management error, a combo, the Swiss cheese theory. So this saying that the possibility of dual engine failure is 1 out of 100 billion. Well, even one is still probable. Now, back in our times, we used to say impossible. But later on, the few people, they changed that impossible to less probable. And then from less probable, they changed it to most unlikely to happen. But actually, it means impossible. But if there is a chance of 1 in 100, like I read, what's his name, Richard Dawkins, his book, when he was explaining about the watch theory, that if you put the watch, can it become a Boeing 707 over the period of time, or why not? So it was a good book to read, by the way. But anyhow, in which they say that the probability of having life from non-living things is 1 out of like 10 raised to power 60, which is impossible. And that's where he used the term most unlikely to happen. But if it can happen 1 in 100 billions, it still can happen. So to having it happen is actually one first time you can have it. So it's 50-50, not that long. Anyway, that's probability. So let's not talk about that one. So the apologists who say that it's the dual engine cannot fail, or it can't happen, it's 1 out of 100 billion, but it did happen. So what can you say now? Clearly there is an evidence. Otherwise, a Boeing 787 just doesn't, just says, oh, I'm tired now, so I'm going down, along with 241 passengers. No, it doesn't work like that. Things have gone bad, and pilots were stressed. Even before V1, if they could have taken off, if they could have aborted, they would have been suspended. Like a guy peeing on another passenger, and yet the pilot was blamed. So this is, why did you abort the takeoff? Indian Airlines is already under stress for burning extra fuel. All these flights, they are bound over Pakistan, and still, I mean, they were in huge loss from April 26th, 2025 onwards. So you can't afford to abort an aircraft. So try to understand the culture over there as well. So that's my 2 cents. Any updates, of course, again, condolences to the families and to the crew members and those poor doctors. 38, by the way, last time I quoted 73, sorry, 38 have been confirmed perished, and 150 injured. So I hope this video got your understanding a bit better in terms of knowing the culture in the country and then comparing it with the accidents aviationally. So thank you all. See you next time. Allah Hafiz.